Welcome, folks. Today, we're diving into a fascinating study about digital skills and ICT use in schoolwork, specifically focusing on Mexico.
Sounds interesting. What exactly did the study set out to investigate?
Well, the study, authored by Jamel Taudert, explores how 5 different types of digital skills impact the use of information and communication technology, or ICT, for schoolwork among students in Mexico. These skills are operational, strategic, communication and information, social, and creative.
Okay, so it's looking at different facets of digital skills. How did they go about collecting their data?
And they use data from the 2024 National Survey on Household Availability and Use of Information Technology, or ENDUTIH. This gave them a large-scale sample of 4,190 individuals, mostly children and adolescents, who are frequent ICT users in various levels of education.
That's a pretty sizable sample. What kind of analytical methods did they employ to make sense of all that data?
That they used a multi-stage approach. First, they used partial least squares structural equation modeling, or PLS-SEM, which is a statistical technique. Then, they combined that with importance performance map analysis, IPMA, and necessary condition analysis, NCA.
Wow, that sounds pretty complex. What were some of the key findings that came out of this analysis?
The results showed that the 5 digital skills have different levels of influence on how students use ICT for schoolwork. Notably, operational competencies were found to be very important, while social skills didn't seem to matter as much in this context.
Interesting. So being good at using the tools and software is key, but social media savvy doesn't necessarily translate to better schoolwork?
Exactly. The study also found that having a solid base in operational skills is essential for academic ICT use in Mexico. However, the researchers concluded that there's a systemic problem. Schools aren't doing enough to develop higher-level creative and strategic competencies, which is holding students back from reaching their full potential.
That's a critical point. It's not just about knowing how to use a computer, but also about using it effectively and creatively for learning. Did the study offer any suggestions for how to improve this situation?
Yes, they suggested exploring how to effectively integrate social networks into teaching practices in schools. The idea is to find ways to leverage those social skills that students already have and channel them into more productive academic activities.
That makes sense. Instead of dismissing social media, try to harness its power for educational purposes. The study mentions a digital divide. Could you elaborate on that in the context of this research?
Certainly. The study touches on how the digital divide has evolved. It's no longer just about basic internet access. It's about developing multifaceted digital skills. However, the provision of these skills often deepens existing inequalities. There's an urgent need to discuss how to effectively use digital technologies in education to address these inequities.
So it's not enough to just give everyone a laptop. We need to ensure they have the skills to use it effectively, regardless of their background.
Precisely. The research also highlights that while there's been a lot of focus on how ICT use affects educational achievement, there's been less analysis on how digital skills impact the use of ICT itself. This study aimed to address that gap.
That's a really important distinction. It's about understanding the causal relationship. How do different skills influence ICT use in school? And how can we use that knowledge to improve educational outcomes?
Exactly. The study used a combination of importance performance map analysis and necessary condition analysis to identify the most relevant digital skills and how well Mexican students are developing them.
Earlier, you mentioned operational skills being key. What exactly falls under that category?
Operational skills refer to the ability to use tools, programs, online search engines, and browse different types of websites. It's the basic know-how to navigate the digital world.
Got it. And what about strategic skills? How are those different?
Strategic skills are less widespread and represent a more advanced level of interaction with ICT. It's about aligning ICT use with specific goals, using problem-solving skills, and planning and monitoring the use of digital tools for educational purposes. So, it's about being able to use technology purposefully and effectively to achieve learning objectives. Yes, and the study found that students with more highly developed strategic skills use technology more effectively for learning, regardless of their socioeconomic status.
That's encouraging. What about communication and information skills? How do those fit into the picture?
Communication and information skills include things like information search, digital content interaction, and even Internet of Things skills. These skills facilitate collaborative learning and boost motivation to use ICT.
It sounds like these skills are about being able to find, evaluate, and use information effectively in a digital environment.
That's right. Now, here's a surprising finding. The study found a low negative relationship between social skills and ICT use for schoolwork. In other words, students with stronger social skills weren't necessarily using ICT more effectively for school.
That is surprising. Why do you think that is?
The researchers suggest that it might be because students are using social networks primarily for entertainment, rather than for academic purposes. There's a failure to harness these skills as a positive resource to develop ICT use in schools.
So it's not that social skills are bad, but that they're not being channeled effectively into academic activities.
Exactly. Finally, the study looked at creative skills, which are about creating and modifying digital content. These skills are important for fostering collaboration, critical thinking, and innovative learning environments.
It sounds like these skills are about being able to use technology to express oneself and create new knowledge.
Yes, but the study found that these higher-order skills are often neglected in schools. There's a systemic inefficiency where the skills with the greatest potential to elevate learning are also the most underdeveloped.
That's a real shame. It sounds like there's a need for a shift in focus, from basic operational skills to more advanced creative and strategic skills.
Absolutely. The study suggests a two-pronged strategy. First, bridge the remaining gaps in basic digital literacy, and second, prioritize higher-order skills like creativity and strategy in the curriculum.
It sounds like a comprehensive approach is needed, one that addresses both the foundational skills and the more advanced competencies.
Indeed. The researchers also suggest that schools should conduct competency reviews to identify specific gaps in student and teacher skills and implement project-based methods that link informal skills, like social networking, with formal schoolwork.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating a learning environment that is both engaging and effective. Well, that about wraps up our discussion on this insightful study. It's clear that digital skills are crucial for students in Mexico, but it's not just about knowing how to use technology. It's about using it strategically, creatively, and purposefully for learning. Definitely. Thanks for breaking down this complex research for us. It's given me a lot to think about.
Now, you're welcome. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. We hope you found this discussion informative. Until next time, goodbye.